anti-doping, education, interventions, and whistleblowing policies and procedures. To do so, she was particularly interested in raising the athlete's voice and underlying the complexity of doping and whistleblowing in the sport. Kelsey's unique background paved her way for her to assume her current role with USA Cycling, where she's focused on developing and implementing programs aimed at providing holistic and long-term support and development and protection to USA Cycling members. Her career is motivated by the desire to constantly raise the bar in sporting integrity and athlete welfare practices and procedures from a local event and international peloton. Kelsey completed her BA in psychology at Biola University as a scholarship student athlete. She then received her MSc and PhD in sport and exercise psychology from Leeds Beckett University, where she was a student athlete in volleyball. Please welcome Kelsey. Chuck Hodge is the Chief of Racing and Events. Chuck joined USA Cycling in 2015 as Technical Director before moving into his newest position at VP of Operations in 2017. He moved into this current role as Chief of Racing and Events in 2018, oversees USA Cycling's National Championships, National Series, and Officials program, as well as the development of new programs to benefit event organizers and members at all levels. A former competitive cyclist in road, track, and mountain bike, Chuck moved into the organizational side of the sport in the late 1990s. Since then, he's been involved in organizing some of the largest races in the US, holding management positions in the Tour de Georgia, Tour de Utah, Tour of California, US Pro Challenge, and the 2015 Richmond World Championships. In addition, he is a UCI International Road Commissioner and still works as an official at races of all levels. Chuck is a recent transplant to Larkspur, Colorado, where he lives with his wife and 2 dogs. Welcome, Chuck. And last but not least, Dr. Michael Roshon, who is the Chief Medical Staff for Penrose St. Francis Health Services in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and appointed Chief Medical Officer at USA Cycling. Dr. Roshon is an emergency medicine specialist and has over 22 years of experience in the medical field. A graduate from Vanderbilt University Medical School in 1998, Dr. Roshon was appointed Chief Medical Officer for USA Cycling in May of 2020. He is there to lead the organization's medical strategy and initiatives. Dr. Roshon became an invaluable resource for USA Cycling as the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Athlete Wellbeing Program established in 2019 to support a long-term athlete well-being on and off the bike is a critical initiative and primary focus for the organization. Dr. Roshon will lead a team of voluntary physicians known as USA Cycling's Medical Advisory Group. He will also lead collaboration efforts with the UCI, the US Olympic Committee, and partners to develop sustained health and wellness practices for USA Cycling athletes. Welcome, Dr. Roshon.
Thank you.
I'm going to hand it over to the USA Cycling team so that they can get started.
Great, thanks, Amy. And I'm going to, this is Chuck, I'm going to do a screen share. We've got a basic deck for you all, and hopefully that's showing up. Amy, if you can give me the head nod if you got it okay.
You're looking at the
screen. Oh, okay, working good here.
Yep.
I want to cover a little what we wanted to talk about today.
Hey, Chuck, all we're seeing is your computer background.
Okay,
yes.
I did the wrong one. That's why I always ask. Give me 1 sec. Hit the wrong button. You guys can see Catalina Island off the coast of California then.
Correct.
All right, let's try this again. How's that?
Yes.
All right, technology problem solved. I want to go over a little bit about what we're going to cover today. In speaking with Amy and the folks running the summit, thought this would be valuable. Just want to spend a little bit talking about sort of where we are in the cycling environment with COVID-19 and what we've seen from our end over the last few months. Briefly go into some available tools from USA Cycling that some of you may not have seen, particularly geared around events during COVID. And then what we've seen with events. And during that sort of portion, Dr. Roshon is going to give you an update on the medical side. Then we're going to step a little bit away from the current COVID environment, talk a little about 2021 and some things we're doing on the event side. And then Kelsey's going to take over, talk about athlete health and wellness and the new initiatives we have around D&I, which is pretty exciting stuff. And we'll open it up for some questions, and hopefully we'll be able to respond intelligently to those. So I'm going to spend just a couple minutes talking about some trends we're seeing. Those of you in the event business, I don't think this will be a huge surprise that we've seen a definite decrease in events. Some of the numbers, and I ran these about a month ago for another conference I did. We've seen about a 75% decrease in sanctioned events year to date, and that's as of the end of August. We normally sanction a combination of rods, races, clinics, between 2,200 and 2,400 events a year. So you can imagine what that's done to our numbers. As an example, I ran the numbers for July, which is a month after we started permitting events again. We were down 28% from our normal, or we were down to 28% of our normal event load. We have seen that pick up a little bit going into August and September. Another trend, I think, again, this is obvious, and I'll go into more detail. Events are not what they've been in the past. The way events are run and the shift to virtual, we'll go into some more detail. People are putting on events and races and rods, but they're doing them differently. And I'll say that since March, we have not seen anything take place in the format that it did in the past. And what those variations are dependent. And events are modifying how they operate. And again, I'll cover this in a little more detail in a further slide. Some tools that we've got I wanted to point out, and the way to get to these tools is just go to usacycling.org. On the very top of that, there is a link to our COVID-19 resources, and it'll take you into basically a virtual toolbox. This is one item in there. This is an Excel document we shared with the Bentonville folks in the past. This is a multi-tab, multi-page risk assessment for your event. You go in and fill in a bunch of information, and basically what you're seeing here is the output of it. And this is free for anyone to use and is not necessarily geared just toward bike races, but rods, races, and events in general. Probably the biggest thing we did was a toolkit to assist our organizers and the sport in general with modifying their events to mitigate risk and conduct them safely. This is a 30-something page PDF, which I'm swearing we were going to update sometime in the next few months with what we've learned. Definitely geared towards cycling. What we really did with this document, and Kelsey and Dr. Roshon and some other staff were instrumental in this, is we took CDC guidelines, WHO guidelines, guidelines from other industries, and we integrated those into something cycling specific. Just to give you a quick example, a lot of our events use SAG vehicles to move people around. We found out the CDC's got a great document on how ride share vehicles like Uber can operate during COVID and be sanitized afterwards. We're using that as a suggestion for how to operate SAG vehicles in a race, or in a rod. So again, this is open source, available on our website, and feel free to take a look at it, and hopefully it will help you out. And definitely, if you have some comments, we'd love to hear back from you on things to change with that. Just some examples out of here, how to run packet pickup, how to run time trials. We've got all kind of case studies and scenarios. So feel free to take a look at those. I want to talk about what we're seeing in the new normal for events. Probably the first #1 thing is we're seeing a huge shift to virtual and what we're calling challenge events. The virtual events, some things like Zwift, races or rods or gatherings used in the virtual world. And we separate out what we call challenge events, which we've seen a ton of lately. And those are the events, I work with a charity group I help out every year with their rod. They can't do it in person. They are telling people to go out and rod 100 miles in the next month and post your stuff and do fundraising with that. So moving away from the organized in-person rod they do to challenges for their traditional participants to do on their own in a safe manner. We actually have been working with a lot of those organizers to provide insurance coverage and permitting for those events. Other things with in-person events, I don't think we've seen a rod or race with a group over 50 people out there on the road together. Even some of the Grand Fondos that normally have 1,000 people, they are a great example of a Grand Fondo we had a month ago. Instead of 1,000 people leaving, they did 2 days, and they let people leave in very small groups and waves over the course of 2 days. It socially distanced people. It was easier for SAGs to handle. It was easier for rest stops. That's the kind of thing we're seeing. And you can read through the rest of these, just sanitizing equipment. Pre-reg only is a big thing. We're helping with a mountain bike event next weekend in Colorado. They're going to do a drive-through check-in in our parking lot at USA Cycling. And they're moved from a traditional mass start event to a time trial format. So really integrating a lot of these things we've got in our booklets. Masks, big thing. We're actually requiring our officials to wear masks at events now. Just trying to figure out how to socially distance. What we found is people are really grateful who want to go to events that they're happening, and they do accept those changes. We've seen in the very beginning we had some issues, but generally we've seen people very accepting of the changes, restrictions, and modifications. A lot of cases are just happy to be out there. With this, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Roshon before I come back and let him give a little medical update on the sort of cycling ramifications of what we're seeing with the latest on COVID.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. I appreciate that. So I thought what I'd do is just go through sort of a quick list of sort of what we've learned. If you think about in the early days of this pandemic, we really didn't have any idea what we were up against, and there were some ideas. We've learned a ton in the 6 months following, and as it relates to cycling, I think that there's a couple of key takeaways. Number one, we know that the highest risk for transmitting the virus seems to be crowded indoor spaces. The virus is almost completely spread by respiratory droplets, and those things can really only go about 3 to 6 feet from someone. There is perhaps, at least theoretically, some aerosol spread where it can seem to hang in the air for longer, but we really don't see a whole lot of that style of transmission. Instead, what we see is the close contacts for a prolonged period of time, and it's sort of like the area under the curve. How close are you and how long are you there is when the risks start to really pile up. So that's bad for people to have to do things, inside. Indoor meetings, events are just tough to have right now, but it's good for us because most cycling takes place outside. We see very, very little transmission in the outside, well-ventilated environments, especially if you can keep a little bit of distance between yourself. If you have to get close to someone, if you have to be in an indoor environment for whatever reason, then we know that there are a couple of ways to mitigate that risk. The masks really seem to work. Good old-fashioned surgical masks, like we use in the hospital, stop about 90+% of the transmission from somebody who might have it and be asymptomatic and not even know it to everyone else. So it reduces the spread of those respiratory droplets. So if you have to be around someone, wear a mask is pretty easy. And then we know very clearly that hand sanitizers and hand washing really stop the spread from contact. That's not true for all viruses, but it is definitely true for this virus. So the way it's formed is it has has sort of a fatty layer around it, and the soaps and hand sanitizers disrupt that layer and make the virus non-viable. So hand sanitizing really works. We don't see a ton of transmission from surfaces. There's some theoretical concern that somebody can cough and it lands on a table and you touch it and touch your face. Again, not a good idea. I'd wash your hands and not touch your face, but we don't see a ton of transmission that way. Even in the hospital, one of the things we're seeing is with the stuff that we're doing, wearing the mask, hand washing, we don't see a ton of transmission from sick patients to medical staff. When we have people in the hospital that are getting the virus, they're usually getting it at home or at the grocery store. Or when they do get it at the hospital, it tends to be in the break rooms where, people are sort of relaxed and are then take their mask off while they're eating, and they're in an enclosed space for prolonged periods. So outdoor spread, while it's theoretically possible, does not seem to be the main spread. As we've said from the beginning, the on-bike activities are probably not the risky part. It's all of the other stuff around it. Staying at the hotel rooms, traveling to get there, waiting in line for packet pickup, all that kind of stuff. So we think there are ways to mitigate that. We have not seen a ton of cluster of cases come from medical events. I know all of you guys have probably been watching the tour, and they've been very careful to be, really make a bubble where people, can't get in if they have the virus. And that seems to have been pretty darn effective. So that's maybe a little bit more than most of us can do for regular events, but it is, it's one way to do these large events. The other good news is it's very clear to me that hospitals, doctors are getting much better at taking care of this. When we look at the overall mortality of cases, the severe cases, it's gone down pretty dramatically since the early days. We've learned certain, different drugs can help. Even old drugs we've had around for, ever, can be effective at modulating the immune response and improving the outcomes. So in general, the news is good. We still continue to see transmission sporadically, around different states, and it's amazing to watch. You can almost predict it's going to go up for 2 weeks, and then people are going to get scared. People are going to get serious about doing the right things, and then we'll watch it go down for the next 3 to 4 weeks. And it seems to be sort of the standard pattern. So, in general, as far as we can tell, if you take all of the precautions to make your event safe, and you can keep people separated, as far as we can tell, outdoor cycling tends to still be one of the safest sports you can do. I'm sure there's tons of questions, so I'll hang around and answer anything, but that's my super fast update.
Great, thanks, Michael, and we'll have a chance to ask questions. He is, if you haven't noticed, actually working in another hospital from his normal and has to pull out of here in about 40 minutes, but we'll grab him before the emergencies come in. So, and it looks like Jim sent a chat in saying they've used our stuff. Jim, really glad to hear that you all have been able to use that and are doing some stuff in Michigan. So it's why we're here and why we do it. I want to talk about some lessons we've learned that we think are helpful for the community. Number one, just communicate like crazy. And I think that's on the front end and the back end of the event. Number one, just let people know if you're doing an event, sort of what your metrics are to hold it. We ended up canceling a ton of our national championships this year, but basically every 2 weeks, we're informing our population. We had one stumble during that time, and it was because we moved an event, which is way down the road, and we did not communicate effectively why we moved it. That was our cyclocross nationals, and we learned from that. We want you guys to not make the mistakes we did. Things like having an upfront policy on any cancellations if you do have to cancel. One thing I didn't put in here, but I think is throughout our PDF document, is that let people know what the expectations are at your event. And that is whether it's wearing a mask, where you're going to park, bring your own food instead of expecting, food and water like you normally have. Let folks know what's going on so they're not surprised via email, social media. Also, you have to take precautions seriously. And when this whole thing started, we had a seminar with a few hundred event organizers. And, you know, I take this very seriously. I think we do as an organization. There are folks who think this is a hoax or whatever, that are entitled to that. The fact of the matter is your customer, the participant, a large majority of them expect you to take this seriously. I'll give you the super quick story here. When it got safe to do and Colorado reopened, both my wife and I went and got our hair cut the same day. She went to her place, I went to my place. She goes to her place, people weren't wearing masks, everybody was crowded in, people were talking about what a joke COVID was. She will never go back there again. She felt completely unsafe. I go to where I go, I had to text, I was in the parking lot, they told me when it was okay to come in. They had half the people as normal in there, they had everything spread apart and were cleaning everything. I felt completely safe, and I will go back again. That's how you need to consider this with your events, is what we're looking at. If you hold your event, be ready for people to have opinions. When we started back racing, and still to this day, there are a group of people who don't think we should leave the house. There are also a group of people who think this is a joke and we should be life back to normal. You will hear from all of them at some point or another. So just be prepared for that as you look to hold your event. I want to shift focus a little bit. I've got a couple more slides to go through before I hand it to Kelsey. I do want to talk about 2021 goals for USA Cycling with our events. Our management team has made a decision to the best of our ability. We are going to, and assuming we're back to some type of normal sometime in the future, really need to make a cognizant effort to support rods and races. And we have some ideas of how we're going to do it. One thing we did do this year is we waived all of our permit fees starting in June when we started permitting again, and also lowered our insurance costs just to sort of give back to the community and try to help basically take the money from paying us to help pay for COVID stuff. And we pretty heavily subsidized that insurance cost. We're going to continue that next year. We'll have some numbers later in the year when our insurance policies get finalized for 2021, but really trying to help events through both financial and non-financial. The non-financial things like these COVID guidelines that we've been working on. Another big thing is just working to drive participation for all types of events. And I'll go into some details here in a minute. There's a focus, and Kelsey will talk more about our DE&I, but getting more kids, youth, marginalized segments of our population involved in our sport. We take a look at our demographics and are not, quite frankly, real happy with where we sit. And we're going to make some efforts to change that. And one thing we want to do is, we are a membership organization. That's what keeps the lights on. We want to provide benefits for our members at not only races, but rods. Essentially, we want to create a mutually beneficial relationship with the community. Some ways we're going to do that, we're looking to provide subsidized insurance. Right now, we are subsidizing what we have. We're probably going to go deeper with that and give organizers really good protection for not as much money. This sort of is a two-way street. We're not going to do it for free, but the way we want to do this, we want, again, to be mutually beneficial. So for races, we're going to provide that subsidized insurance, but what the race is going to have to do is things like junior-only races, races for beginner, novice women, races in a dedicated experience for novices in the sport. We really want to have those best practices that are good for bringing new blood in. And if you do those, we're going to reward the event with a lower price. And we've got some real specifics on that we'll be rolling out in the next month or two. With rod events, what we want to do is you provide some benefits to our members. We are going to cut you a deal on insurance. It's not heavy lift, hopefully, on your end. Things like a start corral where you put our riders up front, we're going to lower the price. The biggest thing we want to do for those rod events is really market them to our community and our members. We have a huge, good mailing list. And if you can provide those benefits to us, we're going to market them to members and non-members and also decrease that insurance. driving participation to events is good for all of us. And we really want to have this be a mutually beneficial thing. And if you guys are interested in talking to us about that in the future, we're happy to. But really what we're trying to do is just build some strength back to the event community. I think everybody now realizes how much and what events mean to our community now that we haven't had them. So looking forward to being back at events in real time next year and get some traveling done for a change. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey and Kelsey, just let me know when you want me to progress and I'll go through.
Awesome. We can go to the next one. All right. So I'm just going to kind of bring you up to speed with some of the new initiatives that we have launched kind of right before and then during COVID and things that will move forward with us. In November of 2019, we launched a platform called In Our Own Words, and it's kind of now serving as a feeder into our new diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, which I'll share with you. But In Our Own Words is a platform designed to provide a space for our community to talk about things that matter to them. So recognizing that, you know, we have a community full of lots and lots of people with different experiences, passions, heartaches, etc. And we want to learn from one another. And we want to be able to come alongside one another and cry together, laugh together, celebrate together, whatever it may be. So we launched that in November, and we've had a new story almost every week. We publish a new one every Tuesday. It slowed down recently because we've been so busy. But it's a great way for us to learn about our community. And we've had some really, you know, interesting and insightful stories, everything from how I got on a bike to help myself or to help cope with my ADHD, to being sexually assaulted by a coach, to how I used a bike to lose weight. So there's no limit on what we can talk about, but it's a great way for us to learn about our community, and members can write their own stories, or we interview them and then we ghostwrite it for them and they approve of it. So there should be no barrier to somebody being able to share. And that's been a really, really powerful tool for us. So that was our first step. And then Chuck, if you want to go to the next one. Shortly after that, a little bit after, in February 2019, 2020, not knowing that COVID was about to hit, we launched our athlete wellbeing program. And essentially what this is we are now providing free mental health counseling to all past and present national team athletes, as well as contract workers. So that might be a soigneur or a mechanic, etc. And this program, the timing couldn't have been better. It's been amazing to get it out to athletes and to have them reach out and say, you know, just recognize it's okay to not be okay, but you don't have to stay there. And so what we want to do is help move you forward into a place where you feel confident and like yourself. And we've definitely seen an uptake in this program during COVID. All an athlete or contract worker has to do, and again, this is past or present, so it could be someone that was affiliated with us 20 years ago. They reach out to me via email and just say, hey, I'd like to get some support. I ask them if there's anything in particular they'd want to work on so I can try and connect them with a specialist, and they either tell me or they don't. And then I connect them with a licensed counselor in their area or in their state, given that at the moment we're able to do this by telephone and by computer. So that's been awesome. And that's a program we're really excited about. And we're definitely starting to see a shift in our community of individuals being more and more comfortable to say, I'm not okay, but I'm going to do something about it. And so we're really excited about that and excited to see that shift. Next slide. Another thing that we just launched, it was about a month ago, but some of you will have heard the term Safe Sport. Safe Sport is a program that is across the entire Olympic movement. And one of the groups that is particularly impacted by it is our clubs, because they are often where the majority of our juniors or our minors are housed. And so last month we launched our Safe Sport recognition program. And the idea behind this is we want to give some credit and some visibility to those clubs that are stepping up to the plate and going above and beyond to really try and create as safe and empowering an environment as possible for their riders, not just for their minors, but for everyone involved in that community. And so we're excited about this program, and it'll be something that we advertise from our end on, like, hey, parents, when you're thinking about putting your minor athlete in a club, here's something you should know about. you know, when you see these badges of bronze, silver, or gold, this is what it means. And if you've got the opportunity to go with a gold level club, it's probably a great idea to do that, because we know that they've taken the highest measure in training up and upskilling the people that are working in that club or supporting that club. So we're excited about this, and just again, really focusing on community and culture and creating a safe place for our riders and our community members to engage and grow and learn and enjoy the sport. Next slide. And then that leads us to our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So, you know, we're hearing a lot about this at the moment. Obviously, a lot of different groups and organizations in cycling specifically as well are really engaging with this diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And this has been a really exciting as well as humbling and educational process for us. And we had actually started to form a group that would be looking specifically at increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion at USA Cycling in early January. But with kind of shifts in society and the world, we really amplified that. And so the first step that we took in this space was we put together a task force. And that task force currently consists of 4 internal staff, as well as our CEO, Rob, and then 10 external experts. And so these include current and former athletes, experts from in the DEI space from the cycling community, as well as outside of it. And we're meeting every 2 weeks. And the task force is tasked, for lack of a better word, with helping guide our efforts in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're able to go to them and kind of bounce ideas off them, ask for guidance and suggestions, run different initiatives by them. And it's been an absolutely fantastic resource for us. We are paying our consultants, which was also really important to us. We didn't want to just go out and, you know, kind of ask specific people that we're targeting to serve us, but we wanted to engage them for their expertise. And so they're really behind everything that we're doing. And then the next slide kind of gives you an outline of what we're doing. And actually, our mission as an organization is we believe that sport is inclusive and people should feel comfortable participating in all cycling events, regardless of gender, gender identity, race, class, or any other perceived differences. And ultimately, cycling is a global sport that benefits from diversity in all ways. So we initially, with the support of our task force, identified our mission so that we know what we're working towards. And then we have 2 kind of underlying goals. The first is to increase diversity on our board and staff. And the second is alongside that, to increase diversity in American cycling community. So not just within our membership, but across the entire country. So as the next slide outlines, we've already taken some strategic steps to move forward in this space, but this is the beginning of a long-term forever effort. So the first step, as I said, was we identified and launched our task force. We then actually hosted a series of roundtables, and we asked the same 3 questions in every roundtable, which was kind of in summary form. What are the current opportunities that you see in your community? What's working to get kids on bikes or people on bikes? What are the barriers to getting people on bikes in your community? And then where and how do you think USA Cycling can support DEI efforts? And the first set of roundtables, we invited every single person that had commented on our social media posts related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or sent us an email with a suggestion or a comment. We invited them to take part in the roundtables. And then once that was done, we invited our entire community, as well as just the broader American cycling community, to take part in roundtables with the same 3 questions. And so right now we're going through and identifying themes, and we're going to put that into a report that we will share on our webpage, and actually it launched today. So you can go on our website, usacycling.org, and you can see at the top a tab that says Safe Sport and Wellbeing. Underneath that now is a diversity, equity, and inclusion tab where you will be able to start finding these resources. We've also just launched a demographic survey. And the idea behind this is, you know, we can't really look to create or measure impact if we don't even know what our community looks like and who is in our community at the time. And the reality is we don't. And so we want to get a snapshot of our community so that we can have some benchmarkers and use that information to guide our strategic efforts. We will soon be launching a fund, which is our next step. We're launching it with an industry partner, and we'll be inviting further industry partners to get involved with this. The idea behind the fund is that we're going to take that money and divert it directly into groups and organizations and individuals who are already on the ground working to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in the sport. So we're not going to use it to create new programs for ourselves. We're going to give it to those who are already in this space to help them have further impact and reach. And so if you're interested in being a part of that, the idea is we will launch it and then invite the industry to get together, so that rather than having 50 different organizations in the sport creating their own fund, we can put all that money together and then capitalize on our strengths together and have a bigger reach and a bigger impact over a longer period of time. So we'll be welcoming support for that from anybody. And then two more exciting programs that we're currently planning with a launch date of January 2021. We will soon be announcing the creation of our initiative with historically Black colleges and universities, as well as tribal schools, tribal colleges and universities. And this will be a twofold program. One, we will be looking to launch cycling teams and or clubs within those universities and provide them with financial support as well as coaching and logistical support. The second piece of this is that we will be launching a mentorship program where we provide mentorship from staff at USA Cycling as well as broader industry partners for students at those universities, so that we can look to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion within sports governance alongside within our ridership. So we're really excited about that program. And again, the idea is to launch that in January 2021. We're aiming to engage 4 HBCU schools and 1 TCU school in that 2020 year. And then the final program that we're currently developing is our coach education revamp. And essentially what we're going to be doing here is we're going to start offering continued education units, CEUs, which our coaches are required to get 40 of every 2 years. We're now going to be offering those for coaches who volunteer to mentor a coach from a marginalized community, and or for coaches who volunteer to coach a rider from a marginalized community. And so those will be two additional ways that our coaches can get their CEUs, as well as we can look to decrease the barriers to joining our sport and extend the reach of our community out into those groups that have historically been marginalized from the cycling community. So we're really excited about this. The website launched today, or the webpage on our USA Cycling website. And really our goal with that is to just be a centralized resource spot where individuals can go and they can educate themselves, they can become more knowledgeable about this space, and maybe they can offer to get engaged in one or more of the programs that we're launching. And we're always up for ideas and always looking for partnerships and ways that we can work together to further our reach and impact. So if you've got ideas or questions or want to learn more, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or our organization. And next slide, but I think that's it for me. Yeah.
Yep, and I'll just follow up. I think we're going to open up the questions here in a moment, but thank you all for listening to we had a lot going on aside from what Kelsey and Dr. Roshon talked about, a lot going on in the organization right now. Feel free to reach out to any of us. I've put our emails here. Also in the chat functionality, sent a direct link to our COVID-19 page, as well as the DE&I page, which is brand new. I haven't even looked at it yet, so I'm going to dig into that. But those are in chat if you want a direct link to them. So Amy and Aaron, I will hand it over to you to facilitate any questions, and I'm going to leave the splash screen up if you'd like to have our emails on it.
Perfect. Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, I think that would be great so that people can capture those email addresses. Dr. Roshon, I'm going to start with you so that you can get to your next meeting or
Perfect.
Your next emergency. Over the course of the last few months, USA Cycling's really relied on you and your expertise. And I know that I've participated in a few webinars that you guys have hosted to talk about how COVID has been affecting the cycling community. Do you see now, months later, that the virus is weakening at all?
No. Look, we predict over time the virus will change and will likely weaken some. It should get better at being transmitted and get, less lethal. But we haven't really seen much of that over this short time course. There are a lot of different strains of the virus. It mutates a bunch, but it doesn't necessarily change the fundamental nature of the virus. So it's pretty much the same virus. What has changed is we know way better how to take care of it, and we know way better how to prevent the transmission. So the overall mortality from the early days with the terrible outbreaks in Italy and in New York, where the mortality was really, really high, that has really, really come down as things stay calm. And the other thing that's really good news is other than a few of those big outbreaks, we have not reached capacity at most U.S. Hospitals. So there's still ventilators available and ICU beds available. So we have managed to prevent the transmission enough to keep that capacity there.
Awesome. Thank you. And as far as if somebody was looking to get some of the best information out there, do you have any recommendation on websites that they can visit to read the most accurate information? I know that's hard to.
Are you suggesting that there's inaccurate information out there?
Not at all.
So yeah, look, the CDC has really done a good job. They've put a bunch of stuff on there. There's almost too much to read, but it is rational. It is simple and easy to understand, and it's right. So the CDC website is good. The WHO website is good. I would stay away from things that you see on Facebook and other, other places. If it sounds like a conspiracy theory, it probably is. And look, in the early days, there was a lack of knowledge. We didn't know what we were up against. And so it was really a free-for-all for all of the different miracle cures that might have worked and all this kind of stuff. Those days are over. We have literally tens of thousands of scientific papers have been published on this. And there is a ton of good information out there if you know how to look for it. The Hopkins webpage is also really good, certainly for tracking the numbers. And then almost every health department in the country has a local page that you can look at outbreaks in your area, where the main clusters of cases are from, how the cases are trending in your area. And so they can be really, really helpful for sort of local information as well.
Great. Thank you for that. Chuck, this might be for you. Early on in the pandemic, USA Cycling took the lead with their #GoSolo campaign and provided recommendations and best practices as far as continuing to ride. Is USA Cycling planning any additional campaigns to help set the public perception as USA Cycling events start to return?
Yeah, Amy, I saw that question come in from one of the attendees. We've just in the last few months, and I think we're a microcosm of society in general, as we reopened permitting. And really the reason for a couple months, we would not permit or allow any events. We start allowing that again in June. And as Dr. Roshon said, if you all remember in March, no one knew what was going on with this. And as we learned more, we felt comfortable. We turned basically the go, no go on these events over to the local health departments. One lesson we've learned, and this will lead to the answer, is that that process unfortunately became highly politicized. I think we've seen in society in general. We had places that were saying no events at all. We had places that didn't care. I will say that 90+% of the health departments, and I was involved here in Colorado with the state mandates, did a really good job. Frankly, our time over the last 2 or 3 months has been much more tactical instead of that strategic, of literally being on the phone with event organizers and health departments, and that's where most of our energy has gone. What I do see us doing, which I alluded to in my slides, is once we get a bit over the hump with the pandemic, and hopefully we have a vaccine or good therapies coming out, is to really strengthen up the events and races and rods. And we're going to put a lot of strategic effort more towards building those up and doing it safely. I mean, there is going to be a time period in there where there may be a vaccine out and it's not widespread, and that's going to take a lot of thought and process. I don't know if everybody went to college remembers having to show up with a piece of paper in your hand saying you got a vaccine, vaccination for MMR, but we're going to stay on top of that with Dr. Roshon helping as we get through that. And then it's really, for us, it's bringing events back really strongly for the community.
And so with that, as you kind of touch on, do you see more work from USA Cycling helping local communities with maybe some smaller cycling events as we continue to ramp up getting back to a normal cycling event calendar?
Yeah, Amy, that's really what we've been doing. As a matter of fact, we're probably going to be bringing a staff person back from furlough just to help out with that process. We've got an initiative. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag yet, but we're probably going to be announcing in the next week to bring back, some safe, sort of thought differently events for the fall with cyclocross. We've been talking to organizers about that. A lot of what we've done is literally been on the phone with organizers, walking them through. And it's not that we're experts. We are because we've talked to a bunch of people, but collating those best practices and sharing them across the spectrum. That's how we really contributed the last month or two. As I mentioned, we really want to get out a revision to that PDF return to riding and racing document. That was created in a time we didn't think we would see any mass start events for the next few months. We're now starting to see them in a limited capacity. So how do you handle those in a safe manner? So we will get an update out there here, hopefully in the next month or two.
And what's the best way that someone listening today could look to find that information when it is available?
We'll do a press release out. It'll be on that COVID page. I'll shoot a note out here. I don't have it memorized, but we have a forum. You can actually get to that COVID-19 page for event organizers, and they can go in and share and contribute. It's a free login to contribute. It'll be well publicized, and it'll be sent out to our local association and others.
Great, thank you. Kelsey, how is USA Cycling telling your story to folks about your DEI initiative across the US as a whole?
Great question. We haven't yet. So we were kind of waiting for the website to get going. We needed to actually have something to direct individuals towards when we're telling about all this stuff. So as I said, it launched at like noon today. So there's still some things to work out and some kinks in there. But it'll be the website. And then also, one of the best ways that it's been happening is through those roundtables. I mean, the amount of conversations we had and the amount of people that told us, because a lot of them weren't USA Cycling members, they're like, this is the first time I've ever actually talked to a human at USA Cycling. This is the first time I've ever been heard. This is the first time anyone's ever asked me a question. And so that's something we're going to continue to do at least once every year, where we offer as many roundtables as necessary until everyone who wanted to has had a chance to participate. And then I think the other key thing will be just partnering with industry partners. We can't do this alone, and we don't want to do it alone. We only know what we know. And we can only reach those who even know we exist. So if we really want to have impact, if we really want to change the demographics of the American cycling community, then we absolutely cannot do it alone. And so, that's where we're looking to develop relationships, partnerships, share resources, share information. Everything that we create will be shared and publicly available, just like the COVID resources that we've created. And so it's really about, as we're educating ourselves and becoming more aware and knowledgeable, we want to make sure that we're immediately turning that around and sharing it with our community and really helping them understand, like, in our position, those of us that work in this industry, like, we don't have the luxury, if you want to use that word, to not engage in this space. Like, that time's gone. And so it's up to each of us to step in, and it's okay to not have the answers. We don't have all the answers. But we've got a lot of really great people around who can help us and who can guide us and move us forward. And so, we're looking for as much support and engagement and relationship and partnering as possible.
Awesome. That leads me to a follow-up question. I'm glad you brought up the partnership piece, because the question was going to be, how are you partnering with groups that already exist in some of these spaces to create a stronger platform for USA Cycling? And I think we can reference the fact that there was a press release that came out not too long ago here that talked about how USA Cycling created a formal partnership with Black Girls Do Bike. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's a great example. And that was one that was already kind of in the works before we really established our formal initiatives. But essentially, it's, one of the interesting things that's been coming out of conversations with our community is we have to stop trying to draw communities into us. And instead, we need to go and insert ourselves in those communities that we want to engage with. So we've so long focused on like, well, let's draw them in, let's draw them in. Well, that's not how it works. Like, we have to go make ourselves relevant there and show that we care and find out how do we make ourselves useful in that space. And so the partnership with Black Girls Do Bike is awesome in that it's going to enable us to support them with resources. And, that Black Girls Do Bike has chapters all over the country. Like, they're absolutely smashing it. It's an amazing community. And so we get to learn from their success, but then also we get to provide them with mentorship through our coaching and provide them with resources for coaches. And so it's a kind of benefit to both of us of we're learning from one another. And as far as kind of identifying the broader groups, we are taking suggestions, because one of the things we realize is, like, even if we have funds and grants, there's only a certain group or certain subpopulation that's going to apply for those. And so, creating a grant isn't necessarily quite as effective and useful as we'd like to think. Like, you still have to apply. And so first of all, you have to know that it's available. And second of all, you have to have the confidence and the ability to write the application. But really the first one is you have to know that it exists. And so, we're kind of going out, and part of those roundtables was finding out what's working in different communities. We've made a list of that. We have a growing list of different groups and organizations and clubs that are really working strategically in this space. And then ultimately we're going to be announcing our criteria probably next week or the week after of who the recipients, what criteria they would have to meet. And then we will just be giving those funds to them directly. So for 2020, there won't be an application process. It'll be, we've identified, or we've been made aware of the impact that you're having. We want to help you extend that impact. And then also for us, it's, we're a nonprofit. So for us, it's also us trying to go out and find, like, where can we leverage the community to get some of that funding? So we're applying for grants too. Grants that we can get to extend the reach of some of our programs, and grants that we can get to just turn around and give the money to others. So yeah, it's a combination of us looking, but also I think more importantly, us listening and providing a space and channels that people can communicate with us directly.
That's great. Great. So one final question, and we'll allow each of you to answer it as we look to wrap up. It sounds like USA Cycling has really started to think about a broader future for cycling in our country, which is so refreshing to hear. What is one exciting piece to that or takeaway that you each individually would like the audience to know? And Dr. Roshon, will start with you, so then you can boogie.
Yeah, I think, this pandemic has been an interesting time to sit back and think about, what do you do in your life that you can still do and that's safe? And what do you do in your life that actually helps you? And cycling has really shown well in that. It's amazing that it was just this year that doctors in the UK were able to write a prescription for someone to ride a bike. They could prescribe exercise via cycling, and it just goes to show, how much we're learning about the benefits of cycling in general. How can we keep making it safe? How can we convince people that it's safe to do, even in this crazy time of the virus? And we just want to get that word out, get more people on bikes. Helps all of us.
Great. Chuck?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I will admit that I was offered a job at USA Cycling a few years before I started and swore I'd never worked for the organization. And I'm proud to say I think our organization has dramatically changed in the last few years. You know, things like the work Kelsey's doing and working with groups outside. What do I want to see in the future? And this is going to come across as selfish for the organization, but when a few of us interviewed our new CEO, Rob, and he asked me how I measured success. And I just said, I want to drive down the road and see USA Cycling stickers on the back of cars. You know, I want our organization to be held in esteem in the cycling community and people be proud to show it. And I think we're getting there. And it's a long, hard battle. We were a very narrowly focused elitist organization for years. And I'm proud to be a part of that change, and I think we are changing. I joke it's like steering the Titanic around the iceberg sometimes, but I think we're making progress. And more than anything, I'll just tell this community we are very open to change and ideas that you all have. So feel free to reach out. That's sort of my vision for the next year or two.
Awesome. Great. Kelsey?
Yeah, I think I would kind of echo, I guess, what's been said by both, but particularly Chuck. I'm excited that USA Cycling is starting to mean a community. I think, I've only been around for less than a year and a half, but it was very clear to me in the beginning that relationships with USA Cycling were very transactional. Like, you were relevant. USA Cycling was relevant in your life for a period, and then it wasn't. And so I'm excited to see that starting to shift to like, hey, once you become part of USA Cycling, you are always a part of us for as long as you want to be. Obviously, if you choose to move on, like, so be it. But this is about more than just going to races or going to events or being on a team or any of that. It's about, this means something and I want to be part of it. I want to learn from the other people that are in it. I want to expand my experiences, knowledge, and awareness. And that also includes for us as an organization, becoming really engaged in the broader cycling community with industry partners and other organizations, and recognizing that ultimately we can have way more positive impact together than we can have apart. And we're not in competition with one another. We should all be working towards the same thing, which is to increase the amount of people that are able to access and enjoy the sport. And the only way we can really do that is together. And so I'm excited to see that we're moving in that direction. And I see that internally, and I'm seeing it externally as well. And there's nothing better than getting a comment from someone that says, like, I'm starting to buy in. Like, I see that you are changing. And that's exciting. So it's a intimidating time, and there's a lot of change, but you can't go through something like this pandemic and not change. Like, we were going to change. Everyone's going to. And the biggest mistake we would have made is not changing for the better. So it's exciting to see that we're embracing the unknown and we're making it a positive thing in our organization and our broader community.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I would agree. I think that the voice that you hear from USA Cycling more recently has been a lot more positive and a lot more broad, that it speaks to more than the racers, quite frankly, or the elitist, Chuck, that you referred to. And so we look forward to how, we continue to see you guys develop and how we look to partner with you all in the future. So, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. That's all we have time for. And big shout out to our speakers and Dr. Roshon, if you guys pass that along to him. We look forward to everyone joining us again next week as we hear about some epic cycling adventures from some world-renowned athletes and how they've managed this pandemic. Again, follow us on social media at Visit Bentonville, at Bike Bentonville, and hashtag AR Bike Summit 2020. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you.